The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. My guest today is Lynn Ulbricht, mother of Ross Ulbricht, who is alleged to have created and run the Silk Road Marketplace, which was a dark web market. Lynn and I are going to be talking about freeross.org and topics related to the various issues. Lynn, how are you doing today?
I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah, thanks
Good.
for coming.
Mm-hmm. Sure, thanks for having me.
Right before we get into that, I just want to let listeners know Lynn's going to be coming to speak at the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference, which is February 16th to the 18th in Dallas. And I've seen Lynn speak a couple times, and I think she's going to be a great draw, and it's she's a very important person to have as part of this. So I just want to thank you, publicly for coming, and I appreciate you being there.
Oh, I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I think it'll be a great conference.
All right, so Lynn, go ahead. We probably don't need much background, but let me know, what are the latest issues that you're working on in regards to, helping your son Ross hopefully regain his freedom, and, the legal issues and the political issues, and, what are you working on right now? Where's the state of his case?
Yeah, and for those people who don't know that much about it, I think one reason Ross is relevant to the conference is that he created a website, Silk Road, that was not created as a drug website. I think I need to make that clear. It was created because Ross, worked on the Ron Paul campaign. He was on fire for freedom. He was in his 20s, and he wanted to give people an experience of a free market. And he was also very taken with the little-known cryptocurrency Bitcoin at the time. He talked to me about it a lot. And, in fact, I even asked him, hey, Ross, should I buy some? And he goes, no, Mom, it's too volatile, which is probably the worst financial advice I've ever gotten, because it was very cheap, under $1. But anyway, he was buying a lot of it. And he was very excited about Bitcoin because of the potential for monetary freedom and independence. So it went along with the whole philosophy of the site, which was really designed to protect the privacy of users. It was product agnostic. It was not the buyer and seller decided what to exchange with restrictions. And I want to make that clear too, because the media has somewhat distorted this at times. Ross is very much of a believer in voluntary interaction, peaceful, do no harm interaction. And so the administration of the site prohibited things that created victims or were used force. So child pornography was not permitted, for example, or stolen property was not permitted. And there was a list of things that were restricted, but in general, it was an open, unregulated marketplace where people just determined what they wanted to exchange with each other. And there were many legal things. There was art and books and raw milk and gold. I had someone tell me that his gold was on there when the government seized the site and they took all his money, and it was totally legal. But also illegal things, obviously, drugs. And that was all it was allowed to be mentioned at trial, but actually it was an open market. So just to give a little background. So we've been through, with Ross, a whole long legal process over the last 4 years with a trial that has many, many problems with it and was appealed. And there's a summary of the case and a list of those things on the freeross.org website. And then it was appealed. That was denied. And so now the appeal's being appealed, basically with a petition to the Supreme Court. And that's what I want to focus on a lot when I come to the conference is, where we are now, because it's broad-reaching. There's issues of digital privacy that are being addressed in the courts right now. And depending on how they rule, it'll affect all of us going forward in the digital age. And then there's also a question of using uncharged crimes to convict somebody where a jury hasn't even heard or been ruled on these things. And in Ross's case, the government alleged that he planned murders for hire, which Ross has denied, I don't believe for a second, but also that the government didn't charge him. They didn't bring it to trial, so they never proved it, and a jury never ruled on it. And yet the judge used it to justify a double life sentence plus 40 years for all nonviolent charges. And there's no violent charges in Ross's convictions. And yet he is now residing in a maximum security prison in Florence, Colorado, where they put violent people and violent gangs. And that's who goes to this prison for the most part. And Ross is a totally peaceful guy. And frankly, as a mother, I feel like his safety and his life even could be in jeopardy being in this environment. But anyway, and Ross is not a threat to anyone. I mean, there were no victims who came forward at trial and said Ross had hurt them in any way. So that's where we stand with the case.
Question on that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
What do you think the government's goal was in prosecuting Ross, and why do you think they didn't include alleged murders for hire, and why did they do what they did? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I have lots of ideas. I think that the reason really that they went after Ross so hard is because of Bitcoin. I think that, Chuck Schumer was behind it. He was on the Senate Finance Committee and the Banking Committee. And I think that the powers that be were very alarmed at this cryptocurrency that was out of their control. And the reason I say that, I think the other part of it is that they were concerned about people having privacy on the internet through Tor, where the government couldn't read what the people were doing. And even though Tor is used by dissidents and journalists and all kinds of legitimate people, they claimed in their papers that anyone who uses Tor has criminal intent, which is a pretty outrageous statement. But in any case, I believe it was about Bitcoin essentially because of Chuck Schumer. And by the way, the judge was recommended to the bench by Chuck Schumer. The lead prosecutor, Preet Bharara, was his special counsel for many years. It was, and Ross was brought to Schumer's state to be tried, even though he was arrested in California. So there's a lot of political things about it. But I think the reason I don't think it was about drugs per se is that the biggest drug seller on Silk Road got 10 years. The biggest heroin and cocaine seller got 5. And there's all kinds of other convictions and sentencing that is so disparate from what Ross has received that it's very obvious to me there was a political component. And even the judge referenced that. She said, well, we know you started the site for philosophical reasons, and we're not sure you've given that up yet. And she justified her sentence partly on Ross's political beliefs and libertarian beliefs. So I think that's why. And the reason I don't think they charge him with murders for hire is because I don't think they have proof, because they certainly don't hold back with charges. They even charged him for false IDs because somebody else had false IDs on there. I think if they had proof, and also it's important to know that there's an indictment in Maryland that includes this murder for hire. It's not murder, it's murder for hire charge. Nobody died. That was based on evidence submitted by a corrupt DEA agent who's now in prison, admitting to having stolen over $1 million with another agent from the site, and also who had access to the site and the ability to change anything on it, pretty much. So it's based on the evidence from a corrupt agent who is in prison now. So I think that their case is pretty weak, and I think that's why they didn't charge him. So, that seems to me the only explanation. I can't think of any other reason why they wouldn't. It's not because they're nice. It's not. Believe me, it's not because they're nice. Yeah.
Do you think, it doesn't seem like the government achieved its goal to dampen Bitcoin at all. It seemed like the opposite. So
yeah, and also darknet markets. And one of the things they said was, well, you're going to be an example. You have to shoulder basically the burden for any darknet markets and those proliferated after the sentencing. There's many, many more than there were before Ross's life sentence, and yet that was another excuse for giving him such a heavy-duty sentence was, it's going to stop other people. It hasn't done that at all.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are they, I know that there's a very, either narrow or difficult requirement to be heard by the Supreme Court. What are the issues that you guys have put forth that you want the Supreme Court to judge?
Yeah, well, and I left that up to the legal team because they know a lot better what the Supreme Court's interested in. There's two issues. One is privacy, which addresses specifically the investigation. The government used pen registers and trap and trace devices, known as pen traps, kind of together known as pen traps, without a warrant or probable cause. And their argument is that this should have had a warrant, that the government relies on what they call the third-party doctrine, which was ruled and established almost 40 years ago based on the dial telephone, and they're still surveilling people based on that ruling, and it's outmoded. It doesn't protect citizens of the United States from being surveilled by the government without a warrant. And so they go into a lot of arguments about that. The other one is that it deprives us of a jury trial, which is our right as citizens constitutionally. If a judge decides that you're guilty based on uncharged crimes like murder for hire and enhances an unreasonable sentence with that excuse, again, never proven, never charged, and that flies in the face of our protections. And the reason they say that we have to have a jury trial is to protect us from judges just deciding you're guilty. And, right. To be put in a cage for life, partly based on something that a jury never even ruled, that was never proven, pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah. So those are the two issues that, so he should have had a jury trial, and the other one is that it was, illegal search and seizure? Or do I have that right?
It actually wasn't that he should have had a jury trial. It's that a judge cannot enhance a sentence based on uncharged crimes that have not been proven by a jury. If the jury had convicted Ross on that, then she could use that for her sentencing, legitimately. But they didn't. So she's just taking this story from the government, these allegations that they dropped, basically, and using them to justify this sentence and to sentence him to something that's really quite unreasonable for a first-time offender. No violence, no victims came forward at trial to say Ross had hurt them. None of that. And the other thing is, warrantless search and seizures are unconstitutional. The Fourth Amendment it prohibits this, and that they're being used with a excuse of, this third-party doctrine, and I'll go into it in more detail at the conference, but, this is very outmoded. And basically what the courts are doing now in general, they're trying to apply 20th century law to 21st century in the digital age, and it doesn't fit, and it's not adequate. And what's happening in the process is our constitutional protections are being eroded so that the Fourth Amendment is becoming irrelevant. So that's kind of a quick summary of what the Supreme Court petition is about. And right now we're in the process of gathering different groups are stepping up to file amicus briefs, which is friends of the court briefs that join the petition and saying, yes, you should hear this and this is why. And so that's in the process of happening, and the deadline for that is February 5th. By the time I'm at the conference, we'll know we will have confirmed amicus briefs as well.
Oh, wow. So the more amicus briefs and the more diverse and powerful sources, the better, the more likelihood that the Supreme Court will hear it.
Yeah, it's not only quantity, it's quality. So, and I actually at this level, which is called the cert petition level, that's what it's called, a petition of certiorari. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's called a cert petition. You don't tend to get as many briefs as you do once the Supreme Court accepts it, and then it's called on the merits, and then you have a lot more briefs usually. So, but still, it's good to have them, especially if they're good quality and make good arguments.
Makes sense. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been able to get any big names to file an amicus brief? I don't even know if it's possible, but Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, Snowden. I mean, anyone or people in the U.S. Anyone that you're happy has filed one or wants to file one.
Well, I don't really want to talk about it because it's not all completely public and confirmed.
Okay.
So, but I am happy with the arguments and the people writing them, and I think that it'll make a strong case.
Okay. And you said that so what are the consequences if it's not heard by the Supreme Court, and what are the consequences if it is heard and, the case is not overturned or altered in some way? What do you think is going to happen to, everyone in the U.S.? What's the downside?
Yeah, well, there's so many different things that can and may happen depending on how they rule. The worst case would be if they completely just turned us down. That would be a very devastating blow. I'm really hoping and praying that doesn't happen. It's an important case, and our attorneys are very well respected, some of the leading attorneys in the country in the Supreme Court, and they think it's an important case, and they make a really good argument. It's Williams and Connolly. It's a very well-known firm, and the lawyer in charge of it is the head of their Supreme Court practice, and he's very good. So I'm hoping that, they will hear it. There's another case being heard, has been accepted, called Carpenter, that is based on a similar principle of privacy, but with a cell phone. And so this could be potentially held to see what happens with Carpenter. And if they rule favorably on Carpenter, then it could be remanded back to the Second Circuit Appellate Court to rule based on that ruling. There's so many different potential things that could happen that it's hard to go into them, especially since I'm not a lawyer. But
right.
As long as you stay in the game, you still have options. So that's what we're hoping for.
And how is Ross with all of this? Does he feel like it's about him still, or does he feel like he's part of a greater cause now, or what are you seeing from your interactions with him? How is he feeling about this?
Yeah, well, Ross and I both have, and our family has always felt and have experienced that this is a bit bigger than Ross. I mean, he's in there with other people who shouldn't be in there. There is a friend of his in there who's got a life sentence for selling marijuana, and he's already put in 15 years, and the federal prisons in Colorado, of all places. So there's a lot of people who are over sentenced. It's a problem in this country. And also, Ross, he definitely is happy about what's happened with cryptocurrency, because he always saw it as a path to monetary freedom. And so he's excited about that. And he's had people visit him, and people who know more about it than I do from that standpoint, who've filled him in. And it's fun for him to talk to them because he's sort of out of the loop. He doesn't even have allowed internet,
really?
But or email. But I think he does. Oh, he definitely sees it as a greater cause, and he always did. That's the thing. He's been painted as this sort of criminal thug that is the farthest from the truth. If you knew Ross, or even hear what other people who do know him have to say. He's always been very idealistic and cared about humanity and the best thing for people. So he does see it as a bigger thing. Of course, he would like to be free. It's
right.
A pretty rough road he's on. He has been able to be very involved with the cert petition and conferring with the lawyers and giving them input. And he spends a lot of time in the law library. He's getting a crash course in law school here, and
Sure.
He's smart, so he's been able to, learn a lot and work on his case, and he's very committed to that. It's a problem lately because this prison has been putting them on lockdown almost without a break since Thanksgiving. It's a new warden, and he can't get to the law library when he's on lockdown, so that's been a problem. But hopefully that's going to change. I don't know. But in any case, so he's very involved in it. I think he feels. I really think, and I believe, it's just hard to conceive that Ross will spend he'll die in there, okay? It's just so wrong that we just can't accept it. And he believes that something will happen where he can have a second chance. It's like,
right.
So anyway.
Is there any way to petition?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to petition to at least get him into a lower security prison? That seems, I don't know, is that a path for you? Are you guys working on that? Yes,
I've been very immersed in the whole Supreme Court petition, but that is on my agenda going forward, is finding ways to potentially be able to get him moved to a more appropriate place, because his designation score is so low, each inmate has one, that he'd be just one step up from a camp and a low, even including the charges, because he has no violence. When he went in there, they go, "What are you doing in here?" and they go, "Oh, yeah, it's because of the sentence. Because when you have a life sentence, then they put you in the most high security place where they put violent people. And he doesn't belong in there at all." And I've had guards come up to me and say, "Ross is a great guy. He doesn't belong in here." And they said it to him. They said it to his lawyer. They know. It's obvious. It's very obvious. So I hope that we can somehow get it across to the powers that be, and someone with the authority can move him. But, I haven't been concentrating on that lately because there's a deadline with the Supreme Court, and I've been doing what I can to help with that.
It's my own personal opinion, but, you're an amazing mother to be doing this for him. So I know, you're his mother and everything, but I just want to let you know that you're doing an amazing thing. So,
Thank you. Well, like I said, I can't let him die in there. I just can't. And it also has become a bigger cause for me, because once you see how the criminal justice system operates for yourself, and you hear the stories of the other people in the prison, and see the children and the damage it's doing to these children of these inmates who really are over sentenced in many cases, it's hard you can't go back, And so, but I do appreciate that. Thanks. It's hard, yeah.
And it's funny, people that don't know anything about the criminal justice system, they say, "Oh, lock them up and throw away the key." They'll say that, someone, but they have no concept that there's all kinds of people in there that, may not have done much of anything. Like you said, sold marijuana or smoked it, and, so I agree. And prison doesn't help people, doesn't rehab them. It seems to just punish them for life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or forces them back into criminality. You're right. Or,
right.
It definitely, the way they call themselves correctional institutions, and I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing it. And really, you almost have to become hardened to survive after a while. Ross isn't, but he's certainly matured, but he's not hardened. But I certainly, you're in there for life. It changes you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
How have you, I don't think you guys come from a particular wealth. How have you guys been able to mount this ongoing defense and afford it? I mean, do you accept donations, or how does it work? Yeah,
we definitely accept donations on freeross.org. We've had a lot of support from the cryptocurrency community. The most outstanding has been Roger Ver. It's been great. But many people, it's been a real grassroots movement, and it's allowed us to get where we are now, because it's punitively expensive to fight the federal government, go to the Supreme Court, all that. And so, we've had a lot of help. We've also, spent our own money to the point of, well, guys, I need your help or I'm not going to be able to keep going, because it is ridiculous, how expensive it is. And so we're determined, and we do have a lot of support. I think a lot of people realize that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency would not be where it is if it weren't for Ross's vision. I'm not saying he did everything right. He was a kid, basically. He was young.
Yeah.
He was idealistic, maybe a bit reckless, but he meant no harm, and he had a vision. And like I say, very few people had ever heard of Bitcoin when he first told me about it. He was very excited about it. So a lot of the people in the crypto space have realized that and want to help. And it isn't just for Ross. It's for all of our protections, because there's a lot of encroachment going on from the government going after people, crypto and the drug war and the whole thing. And we need to really pay attention, or we're going to lose our freedom. That I truly believe that.
Yeah. So what do you think? I don't know. You maybe not be an expert in cryptocurrency, but what do you see as playing out over the next couple of years for this space? What are some scenarios you've envisioned?
Oh God. Yeah, I'm definitely not the expert. I'm going to be the least informed person at that conference about cryptocurrency. But, I certainly hope that, it continues to flourish. And, I think that we ought to be able to have different currencies. And I think it's really a freedom issue. So I hope so. I don't know what will happen with government regulation, and I don't know, different governments. I can see that there may be some conflict. Obviously, it's already happening. And it's one issue of many that is going to come to a head probably. But I hope that the cat's out of the bag and that it's unstoppable. That's what I hope.
Yeah, it seems
that's
like
what
it
should happen. Yeah, I'll probably learn a lot about it when I go to Dallas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Any other takeaways you want people to take from this call? And anything that they should look at, before they hear you speak to prepare them, so they'll be better informed about what you're going to talk about?
Well, we have the website is revamped right now. It's pretty new version, freeross.org. It's pretty dense, so there is a overview of the case if you want to look at that. There's 100 letters from people who personally know Ross about who he really is, which people think he's a kingpin thug need to look at, because it's obvious he isn't. He's the opposite. He's a very wonderful person who cares about people and is very peaceful. And there's just a lot of information. There's pictures, all of that. There's ways to help. So I would say that would be the place to go, is freeross.org. And I would just encourage people, don't believe everything you read in the media. A lot of it's sensationalistic and a lot of it's factually wrong. And to, realize that Ross, I understand that some people in the crypto space don't want to be associated with Silk Road. I get it. I mean, I understand. I'm not even defending Silk Road per se. But at the same time, this is bigger than Ross. This is about a lot more than that. And I'd like people to realize, to get past the sensationalism and realize that.
Okay. Well, very good, Lynn. I really appreciate your time. And, thanks
absolutely.
for speaking about this.
It.
And, we're looking forward to having you very much.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.